This video was supposed to be made a year ago, back in the summer of 2023, but here we are in 2024. My name is Genus. I'm a digital artist and animator. I've been doing this for quite a while. At my current stage in life, I've been in the finished school and now I'm job searching phase. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but for now, I want to talk about making the first episode of my own animated series. Well, sorta. To really understand the whole thing, let's rewind a bit. I'm one of those artists who have been drawing for about as long as I can remember. There were times where I'd make little comics on paper. One of those little comics was called Fireboy. I know, really creative name. Luckily, later down the line, a friend of mine came up with a better name that has stuck with me ever since. Ashes. Thanks, Damien. While I unfortunately don't have the original comic anymore, or at least I can't find it, I do, however, have a bunch of old animations and drawings. There were a couple of times where I tried to make a series. There's the aforementioned comic done on paper, a live action one I did when I was 13, and then a bunch of miscellaneous animations that I did. Honestly, each attempt was pretty mediocre and barely felt like any sort of genuine effort at making this thing a reality. But that changed during my high school time. You see, for a good portion of my life, I was kinda the only artist around me. My friends and classmates didn't draw, so I was, the kid who drew. It wasn't until I met a group of online friends who were also artists in 2017 that I realized just how small of a pond I was living in. So not only were they better artists, but they also had their own characters with stories. On one hand, it was intimidating. On the other hand, inspiring. One that particularly stuck out to me was my friend's story called Light in the Return. He just had so much content about his characters in a bunch of different mediums, scripts, drawings, 3D models, animations, you name it. And he still has plans for his story. So if you're interested in original content, you should totally go follow him. It was around this period when I really started to take my idea more seriously and start solidifying it. And of course, both the story and its characters have undergone changes since its inception, but the core of it is still the same. Ashes is a story about a superhero named David who, along with his friends, face both physical threats and moral dilemmas in a way very few people ever experience. Or at least compared to people in the real world. In fiction, almost every philosophy and genre under the sun has been explored. But I digress. In November of 2017, I decided to make a little teaser. In it, you see David walking through GM Big City and a police car passes by, prompting him to spring into action. Very simple. Funnily enough, that teaser has more views and interaction than the actual short I made last year. The short this video is about. But that's really only because I had uploaded a popular Undertale video earlier that year. A video I'll probably end up talking about a bit later in this video. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about my artistic journey or the super specifics of how the story came to be what it is today. I want the main bulk of this video to be about the journey towards making the episode. So let's fast forward to college. My college journey wasn't exactly typical. I focused exclusively on filmmaking and art, refusing to take any gen ed courses. But even though I was taking all the classes I wanted, it wasn't until fall of 2020, my sophomore year of college, that I really made strides towards making Ashes a reality. One of my classes that semester assigned us to make a 20 to 30 second animated short for our final project. Coincidentally, I had an angsty little animatic using Ashes characters to a song made by Josh A, made back in March of that same year. The characters in the animatic were David, the protagonist, and Matt, his friend. One idea that I wanted to incorporate into Ashes was that instead of our teenage superhero being some guy who was picked on during school and is unpopular, I wanted a seemingly confident guy who was well liked at school. And instead of being a role model, I based him off the behavior I witnessed in high school. So he'll cheat on a test, he curses like a sailor, and he'll drink and smoke even though he's underage. And it's not to say that makes him a bad person, he's just a person. He's got a good heart, but he's not supposed to be an angel by any means. So I tried to throw a bit of that into the animatic by showing him drinking alcohol. We had 6 weeks to work on our final, and I used those weeks to animate a 22-second segment from the middle of the animatic. And then I got it shown at the school's winter showcase. and that was special for me. Why? Because while sure, a live-action short of mine was showcased by the school during my freshman year, it was just featured on their website. This time, I got to see my work actually presented via Zoom. Yeah, due to COVID, what would usually be shown on a big silver screen had to be streamed over Zoom. But I didn't mind. It was still so cool for me because I got to see my work being shown to others. And since the Zoom meeting was live, I got to see people's reactions in the chat in real time. I had gotten to show people a tiny bit more of Ashes, and it felt good. But the story doesn't end there. I continued animating shots from the animatic, eventually completing it and uploading it to YouTube in July of 2021. You can read a bit more about the production of that and how I felt about it in the description of that video. It's still on my channel if you want to go check it out. When school rolled back around, I managed to sneak that music video into the school's 2021 Winter Showcase once again, but with two key differences. One, the animation was in its completed form. And two, this one's a big one for me, we got to watch it in person on that big screen I mentioned. For the first time in my life, I got to see my work on a big screen, in a darkened theater, and with the characters I hoped to see get their own animated show. It was wonderful. That moment definitely added fuel to my fire. Up to that point, that was my biggest animated project I had ever done. Where do I go from there? How could I top it? Well, during that same fall semester, I was taking a storyboarding class. See, my college's curriculum worked by giving you 3 semesters to work on your own solo animated thesis film, 1 semester of pre-production your junior year, and 2 semesters of production your senior year. I felt I could get ahead of the curve and start pre-pro during my sophomore year by just doing it in my storyboarding class. I'm no board artist, but my general take on storyboarding is to be able to communicate shot composition and action while still being very rough. I'm especially not in the favor of having storyboards being overly animated to the point where it's almost indistinguishable from rough animation. Of course, this is situational, and in a studio setting where your work informs other people, you'll need to make sure everything is crystal clear. But since it's just me animating this film, you'll often see me simplify characters so much that they're stick figure scribbles. So using Toon Storyboard Pro, I started boarding out what would be the first episode and ended up with a 6-minute animatic where we're introduced to the key cast, David and his 2 best friends, Matthew and Christina. I like a lot of the storytelling elements that were implemented in there. I felt like we got a taste of each character's personality through their interactions in this animatic. Using the rule of 3s, I purposely implemented a visual motif of a POV shot of eyes opening. The animatic ended on a cliffhanger, setting the stage for the story to truly begin. This would be called Episode 0, the point just before the main conflict starts. Now, if you've seen the actual episode and didn't really probe around my channel outside of that, you're probably saying the short was completely different from what you just described. And you'd be correct. In 2022, my spring semester began. It was time to start the first of 3 semesters dedicated to making my film. So I came to that pre-production class thinking I'm ahead, right? While everyone else was going to be spending their time working on their storyboards for their film, I'll already be animating mine. When I showed the professor that version of the animatic saying I'm ready to start working on the animation, it didn't quite go the way I wanted. There were a few key points he brought up. He advised against making the start of a series, saying it usually wasn't what you want to make for this kind of project, and the story should be self-contained, having a beginning, middle, and end with some sort of twist. This professor tried to push everyone to have some sort of twist ending in their films for some reason, even if the story didn't really warrant it. Anyways, he said I only had a beginning, and consequently, not a lot happens in the film itself. Cool. So that first bit I was going to completely ignore. This professor would often contradict himself. One of those contradictions was often saying, since this is for college, take this opportunity to make the film you want because you're going to have to work on other people's projects for most of your life. Only to later say we shouldn't pursue certain ideas because they're a cliche and not what employers were looking for. Him suggesting that I don't start the animated series that I've wanted to do for so long, it's just out of the question. That being said, I did take the other 2 notes to heart. Not a lot really happened in that 6-minute animatic, and it is an incomplete story. This was my chance to really get people interested in Ashes. Would they really be interested in just seeing a guy talk to his friends, go to school, and end with some vague cliffhanger? So I redid the animatic. My idea was for it to take place after the events of the initial animatic, but still lead up to the same cliffhanger. That's why you see a part 1 and a part 2 on my YouTube channel. Part 1 is that initial animatic. Part 2 is the one that actually ended up being produced. The new animatic answered some basic storytelling questions. Who or what is our character? A metahuman. The setting? A cell in the silos. His goal? Escape. How does he try to achieve his goal? Tricks the guard. Does he succeed? No. By addressing these questions, I felt I created a more self-contained story while still connecting to a larger narrative. On top of that, it was more action-oriented so that a general audience may feel interested enough to stick around and watch. This isn't to say that I think slower storytelling is somehow inferior to action. After all, I did already make a 6-minute animatic that was more about the characters interacting, but I was trying to incorporate a common essay writing principle, the idea of a hook. In order to get the reader interested, you gotta have a first sentence or paragraph that really grabs their attention. I mean, you see this idea used everywhere. Movie trailers, click-baity articles, and YouTube thumbnails. Even in this video, I'm trying to use it, starting off the video saying I made my own animated series. Did it work? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Something that annoyed me after making this new animatic was that the professor now kept saying it wasn't original enough and would consistently keep comparing this film to Akira. He would say that everything I'm doing with this idea was already done in Akira, and that I should try to change it so it has more of my voice in it. That really bothered me because, one, it is written in my voice. I'm not sure if I know how to not write in my voice. And two, he would proceed to give ideas that aren't in my voice as if he knew what my voice was for me. This note would be repeated by him all the way up to the film's completion. Now, of course, he didn't say this to try and be hurtful. It's his job to try and push the students to make the best film they can make, but that didn't really make it less bothersome, if I'm being honest. Especially since it's not even a movie I've seen, nor do I plan on watching it. It's not the first time my work has been called unoriginal. Another professor said I wasn't even bringing anything new to the superhero genre. Again, it's an honest criticism, and it's not meant to be mean. While I may be self-conscious about it from time to time, at the end of the day, Ashes is really for myself. So of course it's gonna be derivative of the media I liked growing up. That's right, I know it's unoriginal. But it's not based on Akira. I got direct influence from Spider-Man. The lab David is in is based off the Weapon X facilities in Marvel Comics. The sequence at the end of the short takes visual influence from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And then it's not just inspired by fiction, it borrows from the life I've experienced thus far. David's personality is heavily inspired by a friend of mine from high school. I feel like there's authenticity in pulling from life. Anyways, thanks Maddie. Moving on from that. Key takeaway, I had a new animatic, ready to produce. Of course I would have loved to add more tension to the piece by maybe having him run into more guards, maybe more hints of his powers manifesting. There's so much more meat I could have added. And trust me, I wanted to add it, but I have this motto, MVP. MVP stands for minimum viable product. If I have something I want to get done by a deadline, I defer to this motto. What it means is that I have to first try and aim to complete the bare minimum requirements to make something work before adding on to it. This helps me avoid scope creep, the phenomenon where as a project goes on, people add more and more onto it until it can no longer be completed. I've seen so many people's projects fall victim to this, and I try to avoid it like the plague. So if I wanted to complete this film, I had to work within reasonable expectations for myself. With the animatic done, it was time to start animating. I still ended up being a little ahead, so I was able to get some animation done without having to wait until next fall. Whenever possible, I would use assignments given to me in other classes as opportunities to work on the film. One class assigned us to do some rotoscope, so I rotoed the shot of David bursting out of the cell. By the end of that semester, I had a few seconds of basic animation done. One mostly unproductive summer break later, and then fall came around once again. Me, with my ambition, decided I not only wanted to work on my film, but I also chose to do the class called APS, where the entire class works on a film together. So I had a solo film and a class film to work on. I had my work cut out for me. Balancing working on the two wasn't easy. My film often took a backseat to the needs of the APS film because it's different when other people are depending on you. I ended up in one of the lead roles for APS and animated about 20% of that entire film, which is an 8-minute film, by the way. I was pretty much animating non-stop for this fall and spring. There's this funny story where I went to a friend's place for an Owl House watch party. My friend got up to get breakfast the next morning, saw me sleeping on the couch, quickly use the bathroom, and by the time they came out, I was already up and animating. That's pretty much how I do things when I'm in work mode. I just roll out of bed and immediately start animating. Now that we're talking about production, I can get into a bit of the technical details that I personally wish more behind the scenes content would delve into. I'll try not to overdo it and bore you guys, but if any of you have any specific questions about the process, you can comment your question and I'll do my best to answer. To keep track of progress, I create a shot list in a Google spreadsheet. Instead of just changing the cell color to mark a shot as complete, I set it up so that the color changed based on a percentage value I entered. This percentage also updated related cells, including a counter that showed how many shots were left. This system helped me monitor my progress and gave me a clear view of what still needed to be done. My main animation software of choice was Toon Harmony. For a good amount of shots, especially the basic ones, I slightly deviated from the usual animation pipeline. Instead of doing full roughed out animation and then cleaning it up, I would often only do the main keys and do the in-betweens during the cleanup process. It helped save me from having to animate things twice, if that makes any sense. Of course, the shots that are more dynamic were roughed out in full before being cleaned up. I will say that I'm extremely slow at cleaning up animation, so I'm currently trying to find a rougher approach to clean up. Maybe something akin to the rough Xerox look that Disney had going on in the 60s and 70s. While most of the animation was done in Harmony, there was a tiny bit of animation done in FireAlpaca. Most notably, the roughs for David yelling at the end of the short, which I then brought into Harmony and created this sort of pseudo rig to give him more body movement. There's also the painting of the Earth in that space sequence. That was also done in FireAlpaca, if you're curious. I was still double dipping in as many classes as I could. I had a CG mentor, Shad Bradbury, who was willing to let me work on my film for homework and would give me notes on how I could improve the animation. This man is probably the best animation teacher I've ever had. Not an exaggeration to say that he literally changed the trajectory of my life with how much he's taught me. The 3D backgrounds were all done in Blender. I was initially going to do all of those myself, but one of the other guys in my solo class offered to do the lab and the exterior environment for the silos. I ended up working with this guy a lot more in the future. Now, instead of me talking about his work, I thought it'd be neat if he got to speak about his own work. So take it away, Sharp.
Hi, I'm Sharp FLA. I did a good chunk of the environmental modeling for Ash's episode 0. I took an approach that's pretty typical of most environmental modeling for CG and tried to make a bunch of modular parts that I can instance around my sets to make my workflow really quick and unified. Here are the parts that I used to make the lab set. Some of these I made myself, some of these were made by Genus, and others were gotten from the internet. We have this main test tube here, which is our hero piece with the computer right next to it. This table, which was found online, amongst various other tubes and staircases and stuff. Once I had these assets ready to go, I just filled out my space with them in a way that made logical sense. And this is sort of what I got. With a neat looking shader and some decent lighting, I think that it all really came together. We've got some volumetrics to give a sense of depth and a lot of bloom going on to feel extra punchy. There are some additional assets here that weren't really included in the list, like these pipes on the side to give some background detail. I tried to use the staircases to create this element of scaffolding that I felt really worked with the references that Genus gave me. I used pretty much the same approach when I went to do the silos. If we zoom out, we'll see how this project is constructed. This set was based on the Damon silos in Chicago. We used some scan data from Google Earth to put it together. And to fill out the set and make it feel more realized, I took a lot of these chunks of scan data and just instanced them in the background. And when you get to the camera, you don't really notice it. A lot of it's out of view, but it's super good for these kinds of shots where we're focusing more on ground level and we need some background detail. There's a similar thing going on with the trees and grass and other aspects. I use the Megascans Bridge plugin to import a bunch of different trees and shrubs and grasses to fill out the set. I've also gotten these rubble assets to sort of break up hard edges and shapes. To tie everything together, I added some atmospheric fog and an HDRI, filled out my lighting. I have some material blending to add variation in different parts, grass patches and dirt patches to make things feel more grounded, and another blend to mix in bump textures onto the silos themselves. All in all, it was a really fun project to work on, and I'm happy I got the opportunity to do it. If you want to check out my stuff, I'm SharpFLA on YouTube for my tutorials, and SharpSWF if you want to see my films. That's all from me. And now, back to Genus.
Having someone else take care of finishing the backgrounds ended up being a real lifesaver. With the other stuff that had to get done for my film and the APS film, the less things I had to worry about completing on my own, the better. Which leads me to an important part of making this film. Asking for help. While you don't need to go to college to go into animation, it does have some benefits. In this case, it was the fact that I was surrounded by people who also want to go into this industry. The people in my solo film class would often barter and trade services with each other. I offer up my services in rough animation, and in turn, they offer to do some cleanup for me. Some people from my APS class even offered to do some cleanup on my film since the APS film was ahead of schedule and they had some spare time. In the spirit of getting my friends' names in the credits, I asked one of my best friends if he wanted to draw what I called the Children of the Stars. I just felt since he's one of the most familiar with my characters, he should be able to play a small part in bringing this to reality. Had I not been in such a creative environment with peers like this, I'm not sure if my film would have ever gotten done, to be honest. It truly feels like I got lucky with the amount of friends willing to help me out in this endeavor. Something that many artists struggle with is motivation. There are probably thousands of videos out there offering tips on how to stay motivated in creating art. Some of you may be wondering just how I kept myself working through it. How did I stay motivated? Well, for starters, like I said, there's benefits to college. For me, it helps having some external influence pressuring me into getting things done. School provides structure and deadlines, which go a long way in keeping me on track. While it may seem shallow, validation also plays a role. Sharing little snippets on social media, Discord, or even in DMs and receiving a positive and supportive reaction feels good. Of course, this shouldn't be the sole source of motivation, and ideally, you should be able to work without needing it at all. But it's just another thing that helped me push through it. Another huge motivator was that other people helped me, and that sort of seals the deal for me. Because having someone give some of their time to my project and then wasting that time by not finishing feels unacceptable. Lastly, and arguably the most important thing, it's my dream. If I can't pull this off with the resources and time available to me now, how could I hope to do this in the future with a possible career also needing to be attended to? Yes, I got help, but this isn't their dream. It's mine. They're helping me take steps towards my dream, and I don't want to waste that opportunity. All the character animation got completed and cleaned up about 2 weeks before the deadline. At that point, the main tasks left were compositing the 2D animation into the 3D environment and getting the sound design. Fortunately, months earlier, I had asked my friend Chris if he would be interested in handling the sound design for the short, which turned out to be a huge time saver. While I was busy cleaning up the animation, Chris was simultaneously using the rough animation pass to work on all the sound design you hear in the short.
Get back here!
Originally, I had planned to find voice actors for the short because I didn't want my voice to be the voice of David. Not because of shyness or anything, my voice just isn't what I envisioned for the character. However, with time running short, I had to compromise. Chris and I scheduled an ADR session, and for now, David has my voice. I'm not really much of a yelling sort of person, so it was certainly an experience to be yelling at the top of my lungs for as long as I can. You have this take of me screaming with water in my mouth, trying to simulate David being underwater. Hopefully by the time the next episode is in full production, I can cast someone else. Chris was also kind enough to cover the other voices in the short with the help of his roommate, Nikki. With the sound already taken care of, I could focus entirely on compositing, which means time for some more pipeline talk. My usual approach would be to take my 2D and 3D passes, bring them into After Effects, and handle the color correction in there to blend them seamlessly. And that's exactly what I did for a good few shots. However, I quickly realized with the time I had left, matching details like David moving past light sources was taking too long. So I experimented with placing the image sequence directly into Blender and letting Blender's render engine handle how the environment's native lighting would affect David. I was actually satisfied with the results. This method not only allowed my 2D character's color palette to receive color information directly from his surroundings, but it also applied effects like bloom from brighter lights, depth of field from camera settings, and motion blur. I could have added all these effects in After Effects, but doing it this way sped up the process tremendously. Instead of rendering my 3D pass, rendering my 2D pass, importing them into After Effects, spending time making everything look cohesive, and then rendering again, the new process was much simpler. Open my environment file, import my 2D animation, attach it to the camera, and render it all together. Done. That's it. After all that, the final image and sound design was ready. The film was done. With time to spare, in fact. It was finally time to see what I had spent so much time on up on the big screen. What I found out the day of the screening was that they were actually showing my film first. So I had very little time to mentally prepare myself. But I think it went well. There's actually this funny moment where my friends did a small cheer when David says, "It's time." Because when spending a prolonged amount of time working together, inside jokes and verbal tics are bound to pop up. One of ours was randomly quoting the silos in the exact same questioning tone as David in the short. So we joked around, saying that when the line came up during the screening, we would treat it like an MCU moment, where some obscure comic reference is made during the film and the fans go nuts. I'm sure the other people in the audience were very confused as to what we were cheering for. There were 12 films showcased at the screening, including my solo film and the APS film we worked on. But I also contributed to 5 other projects, so my name appeared in the credits for 7 out of the 12 films. Not bad. Even though this video is mainly about the journey of making my personal film, that day was the culmination of a bunch of other stories that were happening simultaneously in my life. Everything from seeing Ash's first episode on the screen, walking up in front of the audience with the APS crew I had just spent the last 8 months working on a film with, knowing this is the last time I'm going to see most of them, my teacher speaking fondly of me to the audience.
Genus. And was in charge of everything from the backgrounds in Blender to, especially this semester, ruined it for me a little bit because usually students need my help with digital compositing and writing and special effects, but I was rendered obsolete and very happy because he did just a great job working with everybody. You can see how many films his name was on today, right? That's a testament of how awesome he is to work with and how awesome his work is. So thank you, Genus.
To asking for the microphone just to say, "Hi Mom," the people in my life cheering for me, to the feeling of reaching a journey's end. It was a great day. After the screening, a bunch of people came up to me to tell me how cool they thought the short was and how much they loved the visuals. I could go home that day and rest now that the film was done. Except there was a small problem. Me, my sound designer, and a couple others noticed there was an element kind of lacking in my film. Initially, we agreed the short didn't need it, but seeing it on the big screen with the loud speakers setup made it clear. It needed music. There were moments where the film felt a bit too quiet and lackluster for what was happening on screen. So I reached out to a composer who had worked on another film showcased at the screening, Luksha. We got into a call and we talked about the film's themes and musical beats I'd like to hit, and not long after, he sent me the score. Then I heard it accompanied with the visuals.
Get back here!
Just wow. I was glad I had listened to the people saying to add music because they were right. The whole thing just felt so much more grand with it included. This just further emphasizes how lucky I am with the people around me who are willing to help out. I can't stress enough that I just wouldn't be anywhere without the support I get. With the film done, submitted to festivals, and uploaded to YouTube, it's time to reflect on how I feel about the final product. I mentioned this earlier, and this probably applies to all future Ashes content I produce in the future, but I just wish I could have added more. Sure, there's animation in there that I consider outright bad, but that's expected when I was juggling work on another film and assisting with other solo projects. There's the Ashes story I envisioned and wrote about, and then there's the scaled down version that had to be rewritten to be feasible for one person to produce. I mean, there's that whole other animatic. It would have been great if that animatic could have also been produced in tandem with the short that did end up getting produced. but that would have resulted in a 10-minute animated episode. And for little old me, I would not have been able to pull that off in that amount of time while already being stretched thin between projects. You may be saying, why don't you just animate it now that you're done with school? I decided I'd rather keep progressing through the story so that it's at least out there. I'd rather have a complete story out there in varying quality than only have the beginning in perfect quality. But that's part of the business. You gotta compromise most of the time to get it done, because most people don't have the resources to get it done in the way that they initially imagined. With over a year of work, tons of support, and a lifetime of ambition, did it pay off? Well, a year later, and it's accrued a whopping 5K views. Well, considering its original content, that's not too bad, right? Here's a fun fact. Since it's my life stream, I of course believe I have to make investments on my side of things. I can't just rely entirely on hopes and dreams. So those 5K views, 74% of that was gained through me paying to have the video shown as an ad. Yep. And honestly, if I get some more income, I might do it again. That must be pretty discouraging for me, huh? No, actually. This is what I expected. I know the game we're playing here. I know I'm going against the odds. It's what I signed up for, having any sort of goal like this. I got a viral video before. It's an Undertale video I spent about 2 months on. It wasn't even meant to be a big hit. I just wanted to learn the animation software. That being said, it does sometimes feel like I live in the shadow of my high school self. Will anything I ever make reach that many people again? Let alone something I myself created and not writing off the success of a massive indie game? Can I only be successful off other people's IPs? Who knows? But I feel like I myself am at least partially to blame. I have this YouTube channel that has no steady flow of content being uploaded. How can I expect to have anyone come across my work at all? Sure, 99% of my subscribers are from those fan animations I made all those years ago, but it's not impossible to rebrand. Another creator I know who goes by Clearly Confused, he too had a viral Undertale animation. But he didn't let his entire internet legacy be limited to that. He put in the work to consistently make shorts with his own original characters, and now he gets hundreds of thousands of views, and his followers know his characters' names. While I want to produce episodes of my series, I should also probably follow suit and try to make little shorts to familiarize people with my characters. Almost like how Gravity Falls had those cool little shorts to market the show before it actually premiered. I mean, as I'm writing the script, I'm seeing an animator I followed since I was 14 suddenly doing numbers on Instagram just because he started uploading old and new shorts of his original Minecraft characters. That being said, Ashes did get some outside recognition here and there that I think is neat. Some of the film festivals I submitted to gave the short some laurels. Now I can technically say it's an award-winning series. Tom Fulp, the founder of Newgrounds himself, messaged me to ask if he could feature the short in a list of student films submitted to the site for that year. Something that was really cool was that Rubber Ross, a notable internet animator, actually ended up seeing the short, and I got some feedback on it.
Ooh, what is this? Okay, it's 4 minutes. We'll see if we can sit through the whole thing. But judging by the thumbnail, this looks incredible. So let's see. Ooh, wow. Ooh. I'm impressed so far. This is good.
Whoa. Okay, we got the action sequence. Ooh,
okay,
this
is solid.
I like that.
This is good. Tranquilizers. Uh-oh, get out of there, buddy.
Movement is really good.
Yeah, it's like Mewtwo. The drawings are strong, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dude, I love projects like these because you can tell between the beginning and the end
they get better
and skills. Yeah. No, it's great. It's great to see.
Avatar State, no?
Yeah, Avatar State. Woo, let's go. Whoa! Yeah. Bro, those impact frames. Let's fucking go, dude. Yeah, that was sick.
Oh, dude, that's
sick.
Sick.
We sat through 4 minutes and I didn't even realize. That was awesome.
That's
wow,
great.
the storyboards and everything. Yeah, it's great, dude. This is awesome. Wow.
Very well done.
Holy, that was awesome. Wow, that was fun, boys.
Keep this up. This is crazy.
Yeah, please keep this up. I could see this going quite a while. 5K views, man, that's a crime.
Super underrated.
Whoa, that frame is badass, man. People don't appreciate animation online
very good.
anymore. I swear to God, this is the YouTube algorithm just fucking buries this shit, and there's so much garbage at the top. All right, this is so cool, guys. I'm gonna link this in chat because this deserves some views. The drawings got so much stronger, right?
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
No, you're not.
No,
crazy.
you can literally see the side profile improvement in the thumbnail on the right side. to
Yeah,
this one.
yeah. Doig Swift says there was an over-reliance on side on heads. It flattens the volume a bit too much.
Actually, yes, I
yeah, that's a
actually do
valid
agree with
point.
that.
That's a valid point. Definitely very valid. Because like a lot of it's like side profile running, side profile looking,
Like, I
side
think
profile action.
initially after the
Yeah, good
action,
point.
there's like an immediate side profile. and
Yeah.
it's gonna-
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Looking forward to seeing what you do next, dude. Genus, that's great. Very, very, very proud.
I'm a broken record at this point when I say thank you to all the friends and family who have supported me. Ashes would have no hope of being anything without you. I wouldn't be anything without you. On this very script, I asked a friend of mine to take a look at these 13 pages and see if there's improvements that could be made, and he took the time to leave some notes for me. Even with that music video animation, I write in the description a massive thanks to my friends, and a good chunk of the comments currently on there are from friends. I'm truly blessed, and I hope for the best in all my loved ones' endeavors. Now, with the film finished, what's next? Well, I ended up going back to school for another semester so that I could make a short every week from concept to completion for 15 weeks in collaboration with Sharp. We hope to upload those shorts soon, so if you're interested, I'll have something hopefully come up on the screen linking to that channel. Since finishing up with school, I've been on the job search for the last 8 months. If you follow me on Twitter, good chance you don't, you've probably seen me lamenting about it to some extent. It's a rough time in the animation industry with the AI stuff and the massive layoffs, and I'm sure I would have struggled to find work even if it was booming. Even though I've made some cash on the side doing small commissions and a bit of teaching and tutoring gigs here and there, the money in my bank account is slowly getting lower. Fun times. But even with the gloom afoot, I'll keep working on improving my animation reel, trying to land work. Here's to hoping for the best. If you liked this video, let me know in the comments. It was my first time doing this sort of thing. If you're interested in Ashes or any of my other work, you can follow this channel and any of my other socials. If you want more content like this, let me know. Hope you all have a good one.